Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Licensing Board. This morning we have apologies from Councillor Duff, Councillor Pover and Councillor Reid. And we're all aware this is the last board meeting before the election, so I will say more about that later. We've got Colin Elliott with us and Shona Douglas is helping do the production. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest? I don't think there are any today, which is good. And do we agree the minute of the board meeting of the 10th of March for approval and signature?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. So can we invite the first applicant to join us, please? Good morning. We've got Lewis and Catriona Cameron with us this morning. Or is it just Lewis?
Needs to unmute themselves.
Can you unmute so you can answer me? Okay, I can see you both.
Yes, it's Lewis here and Beth, our venue manager.
Oh,
is here.
right.
My wife's she's busy just now, but
that's absolutely fine. So I'm Councillor Kathleen Baird, the convener of the Licensing Board, and with us this morning we've got Councillor Parrott, Councillor Wilson, Councillor McCall, Councillor Gray, Councillor Brock and Councillor James, and the Deputy Clerk, Colin Elliott. Okay, we'll now commence. This is a premises licence application for the Cardinal Steading Butterstone. Can I invite the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, convener. Now, of course, you have the applicants participating by video conferencing here. This is an application for a full premises licence. It's an events and weddings venue in a rural location. Section 50 certificates are in place for planning, building standards and food hygiene. Police Scotland have advised the applicant and connected persons who do not have any relevant offences, and they haven't given any response on antisocial behaviour in and within the 50 metres of the premises last year. And now, although this is a wedding and events venue, function hours are not sought, only social demand on sales hours are sought. In the supplementary information document, all policies will be in place. For dispersal of patrons, it is stated as a rural venue, all transport leaving the premises must be pre-booked in advance. Now, the proposed designated premises manager, which is Mr. Lewis Cameron, is also a director of the applicant company and I understand lives nearby to the premises. Now, members, you have copies of the location plan and the ground and first floor layout plans within your papers. The premises consist of two blocks or buildings with an external courtyard in between. The premises have recently operated on occasional licences for weddings. And lastly, no objections have been received. Thanks, convener.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Mr. Cameron now to speak to his application, please?
Sorry, what would you like?
Do you want to tell us any more about your application?
Not really. Just as far as sort of ourselves go, we used to have a licence down at Butterstone Loch. We had a bistro down there, so I was a licence holder down there. When we started the wedding venue, we actually had Gourley's in to start with on an occasional licence just till we found our feet up here, and then we've been running it 30 plus events ourselves on an occasional licence with no problems. So yeah, just really need to get the full premises licence, save us applying for occasionals all the time. So, but yeah, that's kind of basically it, really.
Okay, can I ask members if you've got any questions? And as usual, put your question in the chat box. Councillor Wilson, you have a question.
Thanks for convening. Good morning to you. How many functions do you anticipate having annually? If you are granted a licence, you said you'd had about 30, but is that typical of the year or not?
Well, that was from last year as well. But typically this year we've got about 50 events booked. We're hoping, well, I think that's slightly artificially high because we're still catching up with COVID, but we're hoping round about 40 events a year, and it'll mainly be from March till November time will be our sort of main area.
Okay. Are they mainly weddings or anniversaries?
Mainly weddings. We've had a Dougie MacLean concert. They're keen to do sort of 2 or 3 a year with Dougie MacLean. He's just down the road, so good relationship with him. And then we're doing a whiskey and gin festival in association with Robertson's in Pitlochry. Sorry.
The charity dinners.
Oh yeah, and then through that we'll do a charity dinner as well for the Scottish Air Ambulance. So that's all kind of stuff that we think we'll repeat every year. There might be 1 or 2 odd little things that appear in between as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor McCall.
Thank you, convener. Hi there. Thank you very much indeed for coming along. And just a couple of questions that spring to mind. If this is the kind of business that you've got, which is events and weddings that you're talking about, why have you gone for the restricted hours rather than event hours?
Because I live right beside it, and I've got a young family, and I don't want to be serving people out there till 2 in the morning. So.
No, that makes perfect sense. That's absolutely great. And it's stated that people must create or have the plans for their departing in advance. Do you take recognizance of that? Do they have to show you how they're doing it, or how's your dispersal of patrons once it's done?
Yeah, well, Beth works closely with the couple on the lead up to their wedding, and we're usually advising them of local transport companies and recommending taxis, buses. So there's a lot of communication before every event to make sure that they've got it all in place. Because a lot of people, if they're coming from Edinburgh or Glasgow, think they can just stand out and click their fingers and a taxi will appear. And as you know, out in the rural areas, it doesn't happen. So we're keen to make sure that they fully understand that before they even get here.
No, thank you very much indeed for your answers. That's great. Thank you, convener.
Thank you very much. I have no questions for you because my answer was kind of about why the restricted hours, but I think that was a very, very sensible answer you gave, and that's actually what we all want, people to be thinking of others and certainly thinking about your own family, getting an early night. So that's quite a good answer. I have got no further questions, and I don't see any members looking to ask a question. Have you anything further you'd like to tell us?
No. I mean, I suppose the only other bit of information on myself is we're fully checked out by the police. We've got RFD license, shotgun license, firearms licenses. We're checked out by the police a lot. So no problems from us on our side really. We're in safe hands here.
That's good. And I think it's quite sensible to get the proper premises license rather than to keep asking for occasional licenses. And that's actually takes some pressure off the team at the licensing board. So that is also helpful for the council as well. So I think we're now ready to come to a decision. So I'd like to propose that we grant the application subject to mandatory conditions.
Happy to second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parrott. Are members in agreement?
Agreed, convener.
Agreed.
Does anyone wish to add any local condition to this application?
No, thank you.
I don't see anyone wishing to add. So licence is granted. Deputy Clerk, over to you.
Thank you, convener. I have nothing to add. That's clearly a premises licence granted subject to mandatory conditions.
Thank you very much. So that's you free to go. So thank you very much for coming along, and we wish your business every success. So
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Now, convener, already ahead of ourselves, convener, by 5 minutes for the next one coming in. If you wish to, you could go to a non-cited marker.
Yep.
And that would be 5 agenda, page 45 of your papers for Perth Continental Store, if you wish to.
Yeah, that's fine by me. Yes, I don't see any point of, if there's no one there, just let's move on. So this is paper 5, Perth Continental Store, Unit 2, Rannoch Road. And this is a premises license application for day-to-day convenience. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Wait, sorry. Unit 2, Rannoch Road. Can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Convener. Now, this is written representation participation, so nobody will be present. The application is for a full premises licence. The applicant is seeking an off-sales facility 10 till 10, 7 days a week. Now, Section 50 certificates are in place for planning and food hygiene. A Section 50 certificate is not in place for building standards. They commented that a building warrant and ultimately a completion certificate is required for the proposed development, but to date none has been submitted. The plan as proposed would not meet current building regulations, so changes would be required before any consent would be granted. They also said that no work should begin until such time as necessary approval was in place. Now, my understanding is the applicant and the applicant and architect are in discussions with building standards. We have not received clearance, so as a result of that, the application today will need to be downgraded to a provisional premises licence with delegated powers applying to the confirmation stage, which you'll be familiar with. Now, Police Scotland have advised the applicant and connected persons do not have any relevant offences. The police have confirmed there have been no cases, complaints and representations within 1 year concerning antisocial behaviour on the premises or within a 50-metre radius of the premises. And you've got a copy of the proposed location and proposed layout plan within your papers. And lastly, Convener, no objections have been received. I have nothing more to add.
Thank you. Do members need any clarification on any matter by the Deputy Clerk?
Not for me.
No.
Thank you.
No,
We were happy to grant this application, obviously
Happy.
downgraded to a provisional with the mandatory conditions.
Agreed, Convener.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Just to step in, Convener, that would be downgrade the application to a provisional. We have to do that first of all, and then it would be thereafter grant subject to mandatory conditions, and there's been no mention of local conditions.
Correct.
Right, Convener, we are 2 minutes away from the next person. I'm not aware if they're to attend by telephone. Can I ask Miss Douglas if they're waiting in the lobby yet? Do you know? Don't appear to be anyone. Again, Convener, it's up to you. Not yet.
Right,
Convener, we can either go to another non-site.
We could go to another
Well, it's only 1
non-sighted
minute
one.
left. Yes, we only have 1 minute, so it's either wait for a minute and hope that he comes in at 10:15, or we go on to a non-sighted.
Well, if it's one non-sighted that's not going to give us issues, we could perhaps do that.
Agreed.
Yes, if I can take you to, it would be 7.4 on your papers, page 119. It's a major variation, not a new one, but a major variation for Arthur News.
Okay.
Sorry, Convener, I'm just catching up with my notes here. Members, this is a major variation for Arthur News, Arthur Street, Blairgowrie. The applicant participating, but it's a non-sighted because there's a written rep before you. The proposed variation seeks to firstly remove reference to generally closing at 6 p.m. and secondly to add off-sales deliveries to the licensing. That's the main purpose of the variation. Now, of course, members, the board's policy 5.22 on delivery of alcohol to and consumption by persons under 18 or drunk persons is relevant. But I haven't produced it for the very reason that the premises licence holder has accepted that policy and is proposing to incorporate the standard wording of the local condition on deliveries into 5F of the operating plan. So there would be, if you grant this application, there's no need to add the local condition. By granting, it's there. And the only other matter, Convener, is that no objections have been received to this major variation.
Thank you very much. Can I ask members if they have any questions?
Not from me.
No questions, Convener.
Convener.
Happy to move forward.
The information is all in the papers there, and the Deputy Clerk has given us the information, so I'm happy to grant this application grant the variation. Okay, everyone quite in agreement with this?
Agreed.
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 Agreed,
Thank
convener. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, convener, we are slightly beyond time for the next one. I don't think he's in the lobby, so if Mr. Douglas could try and contact him to bring him in. However, we can continue meantime on further non-cited matters. So members, if we
Yes.
go to 7.5, page 123 of your papers, which is capital asset. Right, okay. This is a major variation for capital asset, 26 Tay Street, Perth. The licence holders are Wetherspoons, of course. This is, they're participating by way of written representation, which you have before you. The proposed variation is very simple. It seeks to amend the on-sales terminal licensing hours on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 11 p.m. to push up to 12 midnight. And that's in line with your board policy, of course, and no objections have been received.
Thank you very much. Members have any comment to make on this application? As we know, it's in fact it's in line with the board policy. I don't think there's any need really to debate this unless anyone's got any issues. No.
Just one quick question. The outside drinking area, Mr. Elliott, what are the hours for it?
Now, Councillor Wilson, that is subject to a local condition that regulates the operation of that area, and it's during the hours of 11 a.m. to 7 p.m, which is a bit of an older policy, a very old policy, 7 days per week. Alcohol may be sold and consumed on its own in the outside area, out with those hours, so it can be later on, but it has to be ancillary to the provision of food in the outdoor area. So it can operate similar hours to the inside of the premises, but there are restrictions on what they can do later on in the outdoor area.
And I can't honestly imagine they're serving food after 10 o'clock at night, because most kitchens close before that, so I can't imagine.
Especially on a Friday, Saturday, they do
Yeah.
tend to close their kitchen fairly early.
Yeah.
So that means the outdoor area couldn't be used for certainly after 10 p.m. Sorry, 7 p.m.
Should we maybe add that in, or should we note it, or just in case they do decide to do food after 10 p.m?
We could not because that would be something that would come as a surprise to the applicant. They would need to be notified of that. But essentially what I'm saying is the current licence regulates that. There is a condition that regulates that, so it's covered by the local condition.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
That's fine, thank you. I'm happy to grant this application.
Happy to grant.
Agreed, convener.
Thank you. Now I see the next cited one is waiting, so we have to go back to the agenda, which would be now
Day to day.
day to day. Thank you. It is day to day, right enough.
Day to day, yeah.
Okay. Convener, if you want to, if the person can be brought in, he is by telephone. Yes. You're muted, convener.
Yeah. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm Councillor Kathleen Baird, convener of the licensing board, and this morning we've got with us several other councillors, so I'll just let you know who we've got. We've got Councillor Parrott, Councillor Wilson, Councillor McCall, Councillor Gray, Councillor Brock and Councillor James, and we've got the Deputy Clerk, Colin Elliott.
Okay.
So Mr. Elliott will start off the proceedings and then we will ask you to talk to your application. Okay, Mr. Elliott.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, convener. Of course, we have Mr. Minhas, who's the applicant here by telephone. This application is for a full premises licence. Section 50 certificates are in place for planning, building standards and food hygiene. So we've had clearance from all three services. Police Scotland have advised the applicant does not have any relevant offences. Now, unusually, they have confirmed there have been cases, complaints and representations within 1 year concerning antisocial behaviour on the premises or within 50-metre radius of the premises. And we provided to you members a copy of the antisocial behaviour report. All 4 incidents relate back to between September and November 2021, with staff members contacting the police for assistance. Police Scotland have not objected to this application and they will not be present for today's hearing. Now, moving on, as deliveries of alcohol are sought, Board Policy 5.22 on the delivery of alcohol to and consumption by persons under 18 or drug persons is therefore relevant, and you have a copy of that in your papers. And it's a matter for the board whether it is necessary or expedient to impose a local condition on the licence, if granted, to reflect that policy. You've also got within your papers the proposed location and layout plan for your information. Now, the premises have been operating on occasional licences, and the only other matter is that no objections have been received to the application. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Mr. Minas, would you now like to talk to your application, please? Anything you wish to tell us?
Yes. So it was just the main thing was the objections from the police, and yes, when I spoke to the police as well, they said that they did not have any objections other than they just had to report the antisocial behaviour reports, and they said if you have any problems again in the future, that they are happy to help us out, and they said that we carried out everything properly, the way that we were trained to do, and they were happy with the way that we carried out everything as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I will now invite members to ask any questions, but I'm going to ask the first question and ask you, are you having any problems with youths at the moment?
With youth?
Young people?
Or youths, sorry.
Yeah.
It's just that particular group of youth. They age from around 11 to 13, and we know who they are as well. We know their parents. We've contacted their parents as well, and they say that they've spoke to them many times, but they just don't listen. But it's only that couple of people. There's 2 particular boys, and that's it. But they know that we know who they are, and they know us as well, and they know the staff that work in the shop. But most of the time they're okay. It's just now and again they just have these things. I don't know, just these spur of the moments. But they've got the same problem with everybody in the town. Like last weekend, that same boy threw a stone at our window, but he's been going around doing the same in every store. He says it's nothing. Like, I even spoke to him. I was like, why did you target our shop in particular? He said, it's nothing against you. I just do it to everybody. So I'm not sure. And the police can't do anything about this child as well because he's only 12 years old. Other than that, we don't have a problem with any youth. We have one of the workers. He's actually the youth. He trains them with in the boxing club, so he knows quite a lot of the youths. So that's why they come and respect him as well. So other than that, those 2 individuals, we're okay. We don't have any problems.
Thank you very much for your honesty, and it's quite sad that 2 young people can cause so much problems.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Brock.
Good morning. I just want to ask one question. It's a query that I've got on here. It's on the police report, and it says that an 11-year-old boy was stealing cigarettes. Whereabouts do you keep your cigarettes?
They are under the counter.
And
So
can I ask how they
this-
managed to get into the area?
No, so in this instance, there was a customer who got cigarettes. We handed them over, put them on the counter, and this child, he ran behind them, grabbed the
Oh.
packet and tried to run out the door.
Right, thanks for that. That was my only question I wanted to ask. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. I sorry, my screen's gone a bit funny at the moment, so I don't really see my chat box. Anyone else got a question?
You asked my question, convener.
Oh, right, right, that's fine. Okay, I don't see anyone else wishing to ask any questions, so we are happy to grant this subject to the mandatory conditions.
Content.
And the
Agreed.
local condition,
I have none, convener.
thank you. I don't see anyone else having anything different, so we're happy to grant this application.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agree, convener.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Mr. Elliott, any of you anything wish to add? Sorry, my screen was a bit funny now, it's come back to normal.
Yes, just to be clear, my understanding is you're granting subject to mandatory conditions. Could I also ask, just for my own clarity, so I'm catching up as well, are you also granting it subject to the local condition on deliveries? I see some nodding heads there, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so that's grant subject to mandatory conditions and a local condition concerning deliveries, which I think Mr. Meanhas will be aware of already, but you know, we will
Yes.
notify him later of the full terms of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meanhas, for coming along, and I do hope that the youths decide that their behaviour is not acceptable anywhere. So I hope they're maybe listening to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All the best.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Convener, we are 3 minutes ahead of time again. However, it would appear the function of announcing people in and out is coming in the telephone. We don't get that too often. Most of people are by video, of course. But convener, we're 2 minutes ahead of schedule, but the next person is waiting in the lobby. So what we could do is we just do that, and then we'll do non-sighted if we're catching up again.
You're mute, Kathleen.
I agree that we do go ahead. I was just waiting for the next person to come in. Sorry. I realised after I'd said it, we were mute.
So would you like me to unmute?
Good morning. Yes, if you unmute, you can reply and let us know that you're in the meeting.
The gentleman's just muted, convener.
That's
That's it.
it.
Ah, okay.
Good morning.
Can you? Good morning.
Yes, we
Sorry
can.
about that.
Yes, no, that's okay. We all do it. I'll probably do it as well, so don't worry. I'm Councillor Kathleen Baird, convener of the board, and this morning we've got with us Councillor McCall, Councillor Parrott, Councillor James, Councillor Gray, Councillor Wilson, and Councillor Brock, and Colin Elliott, the Deputy Clerk.
Okay.
So I will invite Deputy Clerk to introduce the application.
Thank you, convener. I think first of all, I think the applicant is actually Mr. Going to check it's Mr. Kenneth Allen who's present, as I understand it. Is it
That's
Mr.
correct,
Allen?
yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Now, members, this application is for a full premises licence. An off-sales facility is sought for shelving within a cabinet, as I understand it. Section 50 certificates are in place for planning, building standards and food hygiene. Police Scotland have advised the applicant and connected persons do not have any relevant offences. They've also confirmed there have been no cases, complaints or representations within 1 year concerning antisocial behaviour on the premises or within a 50-metre radius of the premises. Members, you've got a copy of the proposed location and layout plans within your papers. And lastly, no objections have been received to the application. Thank you, convener. You're muted again, convener.
I'm trying. Sorry, Mr. Allen, about that. Would you like now to talk to your application, please, and tell us something about it?
Yep, certainly. Well, as you can see from the application form, we have a butcher shop, and like all businesses, we are going to suffer, I think, in the next few years of a downturn of footfall. I've also got a Lidl store has opened up in Blairgowrie further along, but half a mile from us, which will detract from people coming into the shop. At the moment, Urbans in Blairgowrie is a destination. People do come in to buy some of the specialty foods that we prepare in the shop, and we try to prepare everything ourselves. And I think wine would just add that little extra to someone coming in to make it a more desirable place to come.
Thank you. That's absolutely fine. Now open it up to questions. Councillor McCall, you have a question.
Thank you very much, convener. Good morning, Mr. Allen. Thank you very much for coming along. It's just so that I've got an idea. So from what you've just said there, am I right in thinking that you see this as just a sort of auxiliary, a nice addition to have to your existing business?
Yes, I'm a butcher shop who would like to have a small selection of wine. I've no intention of becoming a major off license. Therefore, I don't want to get involved with that. And I think the hours that we are open would justify that, because I'm happy to 4 o'clock, and if people want to come in and have a bottle of wine with their steak or their pie, whatever, then that's fine. But I'm not staying open late at night to sell alcohol.
No, thank you very much indeed. That's certainly the impression I got from what you were saying, but I just wanted clarity. Thank you very much indeed. No more questions, convener.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parrott.
Yes, thank you, convener. I think my question was much along the same lines. You're looking to sell. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but higher end wines and beers that complement the meat products that you're selling.
Yes, I would say we're on the top. I'm not high end butcher shop, and in fact I don't charge Edinburgh prices, but we are at the top end, and we undoubtedly have one of the best displays of meat in Perthshire. And yes, I would like to sell wine and also like to sell low alcohol beers, because I think that's, but it's more healthier, and also it's much more fashionable now as well.
Yeah. Okay. No, many thanks.
Thank you very much. I don't see anyone else wishing to ask a question, but what I can tell you, Mr. Allen, that most of the people are sitting nodding and think, now that's a really good idea to go and buy your steak and get a nice bottle of wine at the same time. So there's a few people nodding here, so in agreement with what you're doing.
Right.
So if there are no further questions from board members, I'm happy to grant this application subject to mandatory conditions.
Seconded.
Okay.
Agreed.
Everybody is in agreement, and I am presuming there's no other local conditions anyone wishes to add.
No.
Thank you.
No further conditions.
You, Mr. Ellie, is there anything you wish to add?
No, that's fair, convener. It's grant subject to mandatory conditions with no local conditions added.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Mr. Allen, for coming along, and I wish you well in your slight diversification.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Right. Okay.
I'm waiting for the day that Elvis comes.
Be interesting if it actually changed to has left the building.
Yeah. I wonder what license he would want.
Now, is that us on now to paper 6?
Convener, we are 10 minutes ahead of ourselves, to my surprise, but excuse me, the next citation, which is, as you say, paper 6.1, that is not till 10:45, but we still have 2 non-cited matters we can deal with if you want to go.
We'll just deal with the non-cited, yes.
So take you to 7.6 of your papers, page 127. It's a major variation for the Fair o' Blair. Just catch up my notes. Now, remember, this is a major variation for the Fair o' Blair, 25 Allen Street, Blairgowrie. Premises license holders are JD Wetherspoon Scotland Limited. Now, in terms of issues on the application, this is proceeding by way of written representation. Now, we have received an objection, which you have within your papers, and the objector has indicated that he's willing to rest on his original objection. He's not put any more in, and he's not appealing today. Now, the variation seeks to amend on-sales terminal hours on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 11 p.m. up to 12 midnight, which is in line with your board policy. And as I've said, one objection has been received, which you have in your papers. It's from Dick Parkinson Joiners Limited. And now, in light of the objection, the premises licence holders have advised they are content to accept the following local condition, and I'll read it out to me. The outdoor licensed areas shall not be used after 10 p.m, with the exception that patrons may use a non-seated area near the delivery lift to the rear of the premises for the purpose of smoking. Now, members, the objector has been informed of this possible local condition. The last matter, convener, for a technical point of view, where an objector does not appear, it's a matter for the board what weight to give to that objection in the absence of being able to question the objector. I shall be familiar, I say that every time when they don't appear. Nothing else to add, convener.
Thank you very much. I presume we are happy to continue with this application. Anybody got any questions? Councillor McCall.
Just a little bit of clarity, convener, if I may. The dispersal of patrons will be existing, am I right, Colin? So even if people are going out to smoke at the area standing after 10 o'clock, the current policies of dispersal of patrons and noise will still apply?
That would be correct, of course. My understanding is that do have measures in place. I should say that the condition is going to reflect what already happens, you know, in the sense of the outdoor area is only used. I should say they've got an outdoor area to the front or the bifold doors. That's already subject to a local condition about being closed after 8 p.m. But the outdoor area to the rear, that is already by voluntary business arrangements, if you like, that stops at 10 p.m. The difference you have is there are people that go out and stand to smoke. Now, my understanding is that the policy of the company is that they don't sit down, they simply stand, they have a smoke, they don't take their alcohol out, they go back in. And of course, later on at night, of course, that's less likely. So I do understand the measures in place.
Thank you.
So just if I may, for clarity, that they are already operating in that fashion, in that the outside area is till 10, but thereafter people can smoke outside, and so there's nothing changing with this application. It's just being put in as a policy or as a condition.
That is correct.
Yeah,
It's
okay,
an existing situation, but we're regularising it into a condition.
Okay, thank you. I don't see. Councillor James, are you wishing to ask a question?
You would do if you
question, but clarity really, convener. I'm very familiar with this pub and the application, and it is a well-run establishment. Generally speaking, smokers will go to the front of the building anyway rather than the rear, but yes, you're right, it is an enclosed sort of courtyard to the rear, and not too much problem at all, and I expect the landlord's doing his duty as a landlord and raising a concern for his tenants. That's my sort of feeling.
Thank you very much, Councillor James. I see no one else wishing to ask any questions, so I'm happy to grant this application as bearing the operating plan, and we agree for the local condition as was indicated.
Content.
Thank you. Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Convener, that's quite clear. I have all that noted down. We have one more non-cited. I think we actually do have the
yes, they're waiting. So let's just go with who're waiting to come in. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's 6-1 of your papers, page 57, Home Bargains.
Okay, Shona, going to bring the next applicants in.
Mr. Christie's in, and although his camera's not on and he's muted, they're both in, convener. We just can't see them, and they're both muted. There we go.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Councillor Kathleen Baird, convener of the board, and with me this morning I've got Councillors Parrott, Councillor Wilson, Councillor McCall, Councillor Gray, Councillor Brock, Councillor James, and Deputy Clerk Colin Elliott. So good morning to you, Mr. Christie.
Good morning.
Morning. So I can now invite Mr. Elliott to introduce the application, please.
Thank you, convener. We have the agent, who is Alex Green from Goschocks, as I understand it. And I think Mr. Chris Christie, now I don't have your designation. Could you advise the board your position? I presume you're with Home Bargains.
Yes, I'm the area manager for Home Bargains.
Right, thank you. Now, members, this is a provisional premises licence application for an off-sales facility. Delegated powers apply to the confirmation stage. The powers of the board at the confirmation stage are limited, as members will be familiar. So you should consider all aspects of the provisional application, including whether or not to impose local conditions at this stage. Section 50 certificates are in place for planning and food hygiene. For a provisional premises licence, only planning permission needs to be in place. A Section 50 certificate is not in place for building standards. They have indicated that there is no completion certificate or temporary occupation certificate in place, although fit-out works are continuing. Police Scotland have advised the applicant and connected persons do not have any relevant offences. No response has been received from Police Scotland regarding cases, complaints and representations within 1 year concerning antisocial behaviour on the premises or within 50-metre radius of the premises. Members, in the supplementary information document, all policies appear to be in place except dispersal of patrons. You've also got within your papers the proposed location plan and proposed layout plan. And lastly, convener, no objections have been received to the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now it's over to you to introduce or speak to your application, please.
Thank you, convener. Thank you, Your Honours. I'll very briefly just run through the application, if that's okay. The applicant is Home Bargains, value retailer with approximately 530 stores throughout the UK, about 60, I think, currently in Scotland. They sell the usual groceries, fresh products, household goods, etc. I think there are Home Bargains stores locally in Perth and Forfar. The site of the new store, as you know, is the new multi-million-pound retail development just south of the town on the Perth Road. It's due to contain a number of well-known retail brands going forward. I believe there is already a fully licensed Lidl next door, opened a couple of months ago as well. This store will hopefully be employing approximately 40 plus people, and is due hopefully to open mid-July. The proposal, very limited alcohol range, largely beers and wines. The business does not normally sell a range of spirits, occasional seasonal gift packs, liqueurs, etc. The alcohol display area here is very, very small. I think about 3% of the store, about 15 bays out of over 450. It is small, but it is still very important for my clients' offering, as people do want to come and be able to buy everything that they need all in one shop, as they can do in other stores. As far as meeting the licensing objectives are concerned, all the things that you would expect of a retailer like this: full digital CCTV, Challenge 25, electronics refusal registered, staff training. There's no home deliveries, by the way, here at all, so there's no issues there. Home Bargains ideally have at least 3 personal license holders per store, and they do actually do an independent test purchasing. They have a policy of their own that they do for their own staff. So I said I'd be brief. Just to conclude, really, reiterate that my client is a national retailer, takes its responsibilities very seriously regarding the sale of alcohol. As we've heard from the introduction, there have been no objections to this application. And in light of this, I would respectfully ask the board to grant the provisional premises licence. As we've heard, we do have Chris Christie here from Home Bargains if there are any operational questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. I open it up to members' questions. Councillor Parrott.
Yes, thank you, convener. You use the phrase that you independently test purchase your own staff. Am I to understand that that means you have your own people go around on occasions in a spot check fashion, in ensuring that all staff within your premises are applying the rules properly with regard to underage selling and that type of thing?
Yes, that's correct, Councillor. Chris, if it's okay with the board, if Chris can put any more meat on the bones as far as the independent test purchasing policy, but I believe it is exactly that. It's a third-party optional policy that my client does run. Chris,
Okay.
are you able to add anything?
No, I'm quite happy with that, thanks. And the diagram of the store is quite small. Can you just, if you have the diagram, can you actually just indicate to me which are the bays that hold the alcohol?
Yeah, I believe, Councillor, if you've got a colour plan there, you'd see it because it's in the blue hatching. If it's in
Okay,
black
it's
and
that.
white,
It's just that the writing is very tiny. No, I'm happy with that. Thanks.
okay, thank you, Councillor.
Very much. Anyone else wishing to ask any questions? I see a lot of shaking heads, so I'm presuming that everyone is happy with information that they have received.
Questions?
So I'm happy to grant this application is subject to the mandatory conditions. And
Agreed.
and the local condition 1, which I'm sure
Consent.
will, yep. And there is no need for a dispersal of patrons, I would imagine, because we don't have that in any other store, and I don't see any need to do it on this store. So over to you, Mr. Elliott.
You're muted, Colin.
You're mute, Colin.
You're on mute, Colin. Mr. Elliott, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was typing earlier on, which is why I put myself on mute. I've done it again as well myself today. Now, yeah, just to confirm that my understanding is, members, you've granted it subject to mandatory conditions with no local condition either.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Yep. Agreed.
Thank you, board. Thank you, Your
Thank you
Honours.
very much. Wish you well in your new business in Blairgowrie.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Look.
Now, members, we are 12 minutes ahead of schedule. I know someone's waiting in the lobby, but I think that will be a client and the agent will still need to appear as well. What we can do, there is still the one non-cited matter to deal with if we go to
Yes,
that.
just let's do it.
Let's get that done. Now that's 7.5 of your papers, the very last one, page 133.
7.7.
You've done capital asset. Yeah.
Sorry, 7.7, yeah, that's correct, yes.
7.
Yeah. 7.7, but it's still page 133. Now,
Yeah.
bear with me. Major variation for the Old Mill Inn, Mill Lane, Pitlochry. Premises license holder is McClellan's Think On Limited. Quite a lot in the variation application, but this is participation by way of written representation, which I have before you. The proposed variations principally seek to amend on sales terminal hours Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to 12 midnight from the existing 11 PM, and that's in line with board policy, as you know. Amend close down for functions to reflect current board policy by deleting local condition 1 and inserting the current wording into 5F. And you know the current wording is more that it's the bar for the part of the premises where the function is going to take place closes for half an hour. Other changes are amend children and young persons access to the premises and add, excuse me, and I think this was the principal reason for the variation, add a large outdoor terraced area with a container and stretched tent, which is to the side of the premises. Now, the large outdoor terraced area with a container and stretched tent has been utilised via occasional licences during the pandemic and does have planning permission. Excuse me. Use of the outdoor area and the additional large terraced area are to be limited within the application to 10 PM for the consumption of alcohol. The planning permission in place also restricts the large terraced area to 8 AM to 10 PM, and further, no music amplified or otherwise is permitted in that terraced area. Now, as a technical matter, members, All 6 late night mandatory conditions are showing on the existing premises licence. I noted that, but as there are 6 or more letting bedrooms, only the first condition for a first aider to be present after 1 AM should be on the licence. So late night mandatory conditions 2 to 6 should be deleted. Now that's just a tidying up exercise to reflect what it should be. Now, copies of the proposed location and layout plans are attached. Due to their scale, the details in those plans is not easy to read without zooming in and out on them electronically. And no objections have been received to this application. I've nothing further to add, Convener.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. I do not see anyone wishing to ask any questions. I think all the information is there, and this is more or less a tidying up exercise here, just changing things slightly, but makes it a lot easier. So I don't see any reason why we will not vary this premises licence, vary the operating plan, and amend the location and layout plans as requested, and delete the late night mandatory conditions 2 to 6.
Quite content.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you. So Deputy Clerk, are you happy?
Yes, members, I think, Convener, you've covered it. The only matter you didn't mention is not only is it deleting late night mandatory conditions 2 to 6, but there's also the deletion of local condition 1 as well.
Yeah.
But you're essentially granting the application.
Yes. Thank
Right.
you very much.
Members, sorry, Convener, but that is us 8 minutes ahead of schedule. I may be wrong, but we do not appear to have everyone ready for the next
Well,
application.
I'm proposing we have this 8-minute break and start at 11 o'clock and allow those who require a comfort break to have their comfort break now. So we will 11 o'clock. But when you leave your screen just now, will you remember to just shut off your camera and your microphone when you're away from your
Got a
screen.
guest sitting there waiting, but I don't know if that's for the next application or what. It's Drew and
Yes,
Rose.
but I think there are 2, we require 2 for this one though.
Okay.
Councillor Brock. Yeah, we'll just have the 8-minute and start.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you. See you in a minute.
Back at 11.
Are we ready to return? Everyone back?
I think, convener, we still have 2 members to bring their faces back up. 1, 2, yeah, 2 left.
I think everyone is now back in the meeting.
That's
Yes.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Shona to invite our guests to join the meeting, please?
Shona, could you just admit Mr. Hunter only at the moment until we establish which of his clients comes in first?
Good morning, Mr. Hunter. Are you with us?
Good morning. Hopefully you can see
Yes.
and hear me.
Yes, we can. Good to see you again.
And you. Oh, maybe one day it'll be in person.
Well, well, it won't be me because this is my last board meeting, so I'm retiring at the election, so this will be the finale for me.
Oh well, lucky you if it's as long as it's chosen of your
Yes,
own
it's
volition.
absolutely chosen. Absolutely chosen. Right,
No
can you
worries.
tell us who you've got with us? Because this is the Broxden service station. Have you someone else with you this morning for this application?
Yes, I should have an Andrew Fleming. He did text me to say was I waiting to be let into the meeting, and I was, and I've also now been let in. I see he's just joined. Convener. So, yeah. So Andrew Fleming, who's the area manager for motor fuel covering this particular premises, is now. I can see now at the bottom of my list.
He's joined the meeting. Oh yes, I can see him. Good morning, Mr. Fleming. Do you like your background? Very appropriate.
Thank you very much.
It took me by surprise for a moment, then I realised, very good. Right. This is a provisional premises licence application for Broxden Service Station 2 Broxden Avenue, Perth. Can I invite the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application?
Thank you, Convener. Of course, the applicant and agent have been introduced, so we know who's present. This is a provisional premises licence application. Delegated powers apply to confirmation stage. Powers of the board at the confirmation stage are limited, as members know, so you should consider all aspects of this application, including whether or not to impose local conditions at this stage. Section 50 certificates are in place for planning and food hygiene. Section 50 certificate is not in place for building standards. They've commented a building warrant has been granted, but a completion certificate has not yet been accepted. For a provisional premises licence, only planning permission needs to be in place. Police Scotland have advised applicant connected persons do not have any relevant offences. Also confirmed no antisocial behaviour cases, complaints and representations within 1 year, either on the premises or within 50-metre radius. In the supplementary information document, all policies will be in place except for dispersal of patrons from the premises. Now, members, deliveries of alcohol are sought. Policy 5.22 on the delivery of alcohol to and consumption by persons under 18 or drunk persons is therefore relevant, and you have a copy of that in your papers. Matter for the board whether it is necessary or expedient to impose a local condition on the licence if granted to reflect that policy. Members, you have the proposed location and layout plan with your papers. No objections have been received. Now, the next section, some members will have heard me say before, but I do have to go through it, and I'll make it. I have made it as short as I can, but it's very technical. It's because Mr. Hunter's heard me say this before. It's because it's a petrol filling station that we have to go through a very specific test. Now, this premise is used as a garage or forming part of premises used as a garage, which includes use for sale by retail or petrol hors d'oeuvre. The premises are therefore excluded premises for which no premises licence can have effect, subject to the exception set out in the Licensing Scotland Act 2005, section 123, subsection 5, and I'll refer to that. Premises used for the sale by retail or petrol hors d'oeuvre, or which form part of premises so used, are not excluded premises if persons resident in the locality in which the premises are situated are or are likely to become reliant to a significant extent on the premises as the principal source of A, petrol hors d'oeuvre, or B, groceries, where the premises are or are to be used also for the sale by retail of groceries. Now, assuming the applicants accept the premises as excluded premises, which I think is given here, the first consideration of the board is to determine the locality of the premises and then consider whether persons reliant in that locality, persons resident in that locality are or are likely to become reliant to a significant extent on the premises as the principal source of A, petrol or derv, or B, groceries. It's a matter for the board to determine what the locality is. Case law indicates that persons resident in the locality is not equivalent to and does not mean the community. It should be interpreted as meaning that there are a number of persons resident in the locality going beyond a de minimis or a handful who are reliant. Further, and I'm nearly there, members, reliant to a significant extent recognises a number of persons in the locality, not necessarily constituted as a group, who, as a matter of their purchasing habits, see and treat the shop premises in question as the principal source from which they may in the ordinary course obtain either groceries or fuel, and who would properly consider themselves materially disadvantaged or inconvenienced were that shop not to provide those retail facilities. Evidence of alternative retail outlets is plainly not excluded, but the existence of some alternative facilities within the locality will not prevent giving a positive answer to the question. Now, to address that test, members, the section 125 subsection 5 test, the applicants have produced a customer profiling research report, which is with your papers, members. Thank you, convener.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk, for a very full introduction of this application. It kind of has us all spinning our heads, spinning around all these numbers and figures and things, but they've actually all done their homework about this, and I think we all fully understand exactly what you're saying. So I don't think there's any doubt that people living there do not use that area for their groceries. I think that's quite well established there. Councillor Parrott, you're wanting to ask a question. I think you're, yeah.
We're on to Mr. Hunter's submissions before questions.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I was just like Councillor Parrott, I was doing a bit of clarification there. Okay, well, just wait, Councillor Parrott. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, convener. I think just maybe on touching on a couple of the preliminaries from Mr. Elliott there. I think when we came to you with the Strathty and St Johnstone applications, we had missed out on a dispersal policy. I think just probably because on a misunderstanding from our part as an off-sale premises. Clearly, we cleared that up in relation to those two sites. So if you have a mind to grant this application, then we would do the same in relation to this, in terms of the runoff and so on, prior to the licence being effective. And if you're looking to attach delivery conditions, then of course there's no issue with that. I think you may have attached them in relation to the other ones as well. And in any event, I understand from Mr. Fleming, I think there's a handful of deliveries from the site on a weekly basis anyway, so it's not a large part of what's proposed. I'm conscious that I've got to come to the market research. I'm also conscious for your sins that this Constitution of the Board has probably heard from me on 5 previous occasions with this type of market research. So I suspect, if no one else is, you'll be glad to be off the board after the elections, so in case I come back. But if I could maybe put the application in some context first before coming to the market research. So the application for Broxton comes about now following an investment in the site in excess of £500,000. Now, part of that change was purely on terms of a fuel canopy. If you visited the site recently, you may have noticed it's changed from SO to BP. However, if you've been within the shop premises, I think it formerly was under a Budgeon's convenience, and it's converted to Londis. And I had given to Mr. Elliott some photographs, but I understand you might not be able to see them in terms of a shared screen, unfortunately. But what I would say is, if there's any possibility of you looking at them in the event that you decide to have a recess to consider the application, then I wonder whether you might see them then, because what's been done here is a huge investment from the applicant in terms of the facility. So depending on whether you've been there since February or not, you may have noticed that the former Subway counter, which was over to the right hand side of the premises, has now moved pretty much to the left. That's right. I can see a hand from Councillor McCall there. So it's moved into a distinct area, creating.
Mr. Hunter, could I interrupt?
Yeah.
We've never done this in the board before, and it does relate to permissions, but I do have the photographs on my other monitor, and I can attempt to share if conveners willing to attempt this. We are in a recorded meeting, but I know how to share documents in an ordinary meeting, but this is a recorded meeting, and I don't know if this will work, but I'll attempt to do so for members' benefit. Whether it comes up in the recording, I don't know. Do members have that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Now, Mr.
So,
Hunter, if you want to talk, there are 7 photographs. You can talk through it. And
yeah. So
if you tell me next photograph.
So the first one is clearly just an external view. So you've now, so whereas before I think you had a Budgeon's label all the way across, you'll see that it's now distinct and Subway to the left and Londis to the right. And if you can perhaps move on, Mr. Elliott, you're just scrolling down. So you'll see that the Subway has been created inside the left-hand side to make it almost effectively a distinct part of the premises. So that the alcohol license application doesn't relate to that part of it, but it's just to show you the change. And then when we get into the main part or the main body of the convenience store, you can probably just scroll down as I'm talking, Mr. Elliott, so the members can see that it's clearly been, in my submission, created into a substantial convenience store. And certainly if members are familiar with other petrol filling stations within your jurisdictional area, I think certainly looking at the ones that I had a chance to look at this morning, the convenience store element is about twice the size of the vast majority of your other licensed petrol filling stations. So, for example, at the risk of referring to another client, as it were, the BP Marks and Spencers over at Bullionfield, which happens to be on the agenda this morning, this is about twice the size of that in terms of the convenience capacity. So it's a big change, and it demonstrates a big shift of focus to the convenience element of the premises. I think so. As I say, the photographs are there just to show you, if you've not been in since the changes, that it's moved the Subway away from the main convenience store element into its own unit or sort of part of the premises, if you like, to then make distinct the convenience brand under Londis. So that's hopefully giving you some flavour if you've not seen it already. It's a really busy.
You're muted yourself, Mr. Hunter.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so it's one of the busiest sites in the applicant's estate. It's over 12,000 customers per week. Currently employs 12 staff, of which there's already a personal licence holder working there. And then obviously if this licence is granted, then further members of staff would go through the relevant course. You'll no doubt be familiar with its location within the Broxton service area, where it's obviously, if you're going up the hill, it's on the left-hand side. If you carry on up the hill, you have a McDonald's, a Travelodge, which I don't think has any facility. I think it's literally just rooms. And then there's a Harvester restaurant. As I say, you have heard from me before in relation to the applicant more generally. Motor Fuel have, I think, at last count, over 50 licensed premises in Scotland, of which there have been 2 recent ones granted in your jurisdiction, in your local authority area. And I've acted for Motor Fuel, as it's now known to me, for I think the last 3 years, and its predecessor Malthurst for long before that. And I'm grateful to say that I've not had a need to appear in front of a licensing board for anything other than applications. So no concerns raised about their general operation, and I suppose that's reflected in an absence of any police objection. Turning to the market research, what I would say is that it does reflect, I think, as the convener had possibly hinted at, a reliance on the premises as fuel and not as a principal groceries premises, and I think that is generally accepted. The numbers that come through it all are, I think, broadly consistent with the numbers as it happens for the Bullionfield premises, which you had agreed to treat as a not excluded premises. But what I'll do is I'll run through them briefly, and then I dare say members may have some questions you want to ask, and I can then come back to it as needs be. So interviews were done in these premises, some at a point in time in December, but then again in February of this year, and that was there was a gap in the period due to the renovation that was going on. Because of their location, as you might expect, they enjoy a large number of transient customers because of their proximity to the roundabout and the various trunk roads, and so a total number of just over 1,000 interviews took place over the period of the visit, and consistent with other applications, only those who describe themselves as local residents, and in this circumstance the market researchers took the distance of 1 mile, and I think that's consistent with what we've done for St Johnstone and for the Strathay applications. You'll see that the majority of customers interviewed were non-local residents, so they don't go and participate in the totality of the research, and it's only then those who describe themselves within that distance as participating in full. So a total of 62 customers were interviewed, and I don't know if you have the document in an agenda document, Colin, but on my there's page numbers on the document which I have, which I'm referring to, just in case you've got different numbers.
We have, sorry, Mr. Randall, there's 2 sets of page numbers. They have the board page numbers at the very bottom, but the document page number does show to the extreme right hand side, which I'm seeing 1 or 2 turning heads here. So you can refer to those numbers, they will pick that up.
That's great, I appreciate that, thank you. So on page 7 there's some general information about the customers who were interviewed. That's our demographics, and I would just pause on that page just simply. I think it's quite interesting, or well, in the context of this and being not that interesting in the wider scheme of things, that that although the research doesn't go on to show that there are persons resident in the locality who rely on it for the purposes of their groceries, their weekly shop, you do have the vast majority of customers visiting for grocery shopping, whether that might be almost at 2 visits per week. But so I think it's fair to say they're very well used for convenience shopping, but they are not a source of reliance. On page 8, then you have the questions about the extent to which customers use the premises and the extent to which they rely upon them, and you'll see that if one follows the questions and the charts there, that of the 62, 27 say that it's their principal source for fuel, and those 27 are then asked, well, if it's your principal source of fuel, would you find yourself inconvenienced materially or disadvantaged if it wasn't available to you, of which 10 of those say they would do. In terms of the numbers, what does that mean? Well, it's of the local residents interviewed, it's 15% of the local residents have the necessary reliance. I mentioned the bullion field application as it happened at the time in 2018, that of 1,400 people that had been interviewed for bullion field, 27 had the relevant level of reliance. So I don't know whether it's just a coincidence that it's the same for this application, albeit from some 400 less interviews. And I think when it comes to the question of fuel reliance, I think that just looking geographically as where Broxton is, I think you are about 2 miles in any direction for an alternative fuel supply. So there's obviously ourselves at Strathay, there is Tesco at McDermott Park, and then there's Morrison's heading more into the centre of Perth. But these are all a good distance away. So if you do live in the surrounding area of Broxton, and I accept it's a commercial area as well, But if you do live in that area, then I can understand why there would be a level of reliance for fuel. And I would also note that, of course, the information provided is intended to provide a statistical analysis. It's not an interview of everybody. So we're not saying there are only 10 people in this locality who are reliant. Our references to the 15% of the locals who were interviewed said, and of course, it's a bit of a crude analysis, and it's not the way that a market researcher would do. But if you take the fact that you've got about 12,000 customers a week, and if you bring down that into the number of locals and then the numbers who are reliant, you get about 107 transactions per week where there's a level of reliance demonstrated. The numbers are consistent, as I said, with Boolean field, and therefore I would submit, having agreed that the Boolean field application was one that could benefit from the exclusion, I would invite you to do so in relation to this one. I think the improvement in the convenience offer at the premises is an excellent one. It's undoubtedly popular with customers. I don't actually think, although there's not a relevant level of persons reliant for convenience in terms of the shop for their weekly shop, I don't think there's that much locally as an alternative in terms of a convenience store. I know there's I think a Martin McCall or a McCall's on Oakbank Road with a post office, but there isn't a huge amount locally, and although they're not local residents as such, I think the fact that there's no facilities within the Travel Lodge results in people staying there using the premises for convenient shopping as well. So against that background, and in the absence of any objections to it, I would invite you to grant the application. I'm sure you may have some questions, and I'm more than happy through either myself or through Andrew Fleming to do my best to assist you with those. But I'll leave my submissions there, convener, for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now open up for members' questions. Councillor Parrott.
Yes, thank you very much, convener. I'm quite content with the explanation that's been given as to why this should be an excluded premises. But my question relates to the application section D, licensing objective protecting improving public health, and the last sentence there, which says, in addition, motor fuel alcohol sales price point will be higher than the minimum price required by applying the minimum price per unit for alcohol in Scotland. That says to me that all of your prices will be higher than the Scottish minimum price. That seems a bit odd to me. I can't understand why you would choose to sell things at higher than the minimum price in Scotland that's required. And is that the policy?
Can I check, Councillor Parrott? Is it the supplementary information document you're referring to, rather than the application? Right. Okay. If you bear with me a second, I'll just pull it up on my screen. I didn't have it on my screen. If you can bear with me, just so I've got the same wording as you have. Apologies for that.
It's in the information to accompany application for premises license document.
Unfortunately, gone are the good old days of just simply having things out in paper when you're juggling with about 3 screens in front of you. It's less convenient. So apologies for the short delay. But I think the right here, I have it here. So and it's paragraph D, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the well, the first thing to say is that there's no obligation to charge only the minimum price, and I suppose not necessarily from an applicant point of view, but from the just generally, you'll no doubt appreciate that certain brands try to disassociate themselves from being charged at the minimum level in order to create some aspect of premium. But I think from a public health perspective, that if your prices are higher, I don't necessarily think this was maybe what your intention was, but I don't see how that would be a negative to an applicant, if they're charging slightly higher prices for the convenience associated with the products you're buying, then obviously if you've got a budget, then you presumably in an only position to buy less. I think the point I was perhaps striving at, or the applicant was striving at in the application, is that if the board were to have concerns that any particular premises would be used for bulk purchasing of cheap alcohol, cheap in terms of cost, then these premises would be less attractive than perhaps a large supermarket, which will generally either or not, well, maybe more likely to charge prices that are on the closest of the margins to make it as less expensive for customers as possible to buy as much as possible. Whereas the idea behind any of the premises which Motor Fuel have, which are licensed, is consistent with what Londis is as a convenience store, I suppose, is to allow you to buy a little bit of everything rather than necessarily being able to buy absolutely everything. And it comes with that an increase in cost, I suppose, for the fact that it's convenient rather than parking up and going into a big supermarket, for example.
Thanks for that. I'm obviously within the law. The pricing policy is up to the business, but it does seem odd to me that you would state that you will always exceed the minimum price required by law in Scotland.
Well, it may be that, I mean, I know there's moves afoot at present that I think consultation at present, or suggestion at present at least, that the minimum price will go possibly to 50 or indeed to 60 pence, and then in the event that happens, then that clearly makes a difference for everybody, and I think only in that situation then we might have to revisit it. But I think what I can say with some certainty is that as matters are, as I appear before you today, that in Motor Fuel are not, because of the nature of the convenience they're offering, they're not priced at the lowest possible price.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, convener, and Mr. Hunter may already know this, but if I look out my window, I can nearly see the roof of the Esso. Esso or BP, we still call it Esso, by the way. I haven't quite got onto the brand change, Mr. Hunter. And like Councillor Baird, I'll be retiring at the election. I just want to thank you for your always courtesy when you've appeared before us. I think that's appropriate to say that, I hope, convener. On to the question itself. Clearly, this is a number of applications that have been coming along, and I think it's a wee bit like a pack of cards, if I may say so, that the cards are falling according to the applications and arguments put forward. What are you aiming to do with your alcohol license? What market are you trying to aim for? As a follow on to some degree from Andrew Parrott's question, clearly you're not trying to do the cheapest end, but are you going for selling stuff to associate with the food from the shop, which is mainly grocery type stuff, if I may say so, or are you aiming for the person who's nipped out at night to maybe get a carry-out meal and also buy a bottle of wine somewhere? I'm just interested to know, as much as a local resident, as a board member, what bit of the market you're aiming for and what your product range would broadly be if you were granted that application.
No, yes, of course. I'm grateful, Councillor Wilson, for your kind remarks. I think that the motivation, I suppose, generally behind Motor Fuel, I'm going to come back to these particular premises in a minute, but obviously Motor Fuel had decided that they were spending a lot of time and effort renovating all of their estate to reflect the Londis convenience brand. And I suppose that the target to some extent comes about from customer recognition of what Londis is. So, they're a very well known convenience brand, and I think that I'm not trying to give them a slogan of saying a little bit of everything, but I think the idea very much behind them is that you can go in there and you can, you might, if I'll take an example. You might get, if you want to go in there and buy a tin of beans, you can buy Heinz beans, but you wouldn't necessarily go to the supermarket. When you go to the supermarket and get 6 or 7 different types of baked beans. But the point is, you'll be able to get a little bit of something. And in terms of the target, well, I think that generally petrol filling station convenience stores will attract customers who are very much on a top-up shop, or if particularly these premises, given the extent of the renovation and the ability to buy your evening meal, that if they are in for their, if they happen to coming in for their fuel and they think, right, well, I need something for dinner, I can buy something, whatever that happens to be, what they want for their evening meal. I would like a bottle of wine, and of course at the moment that's not available, so we have to go somewhere else. I don't think that, or it might be, I suppose somebody at the travel lodge saying we're getting something, we'd like a bottle of wine to take back to our room or something. I think in terms of, that's the kind of expectation of a petrol filling station. It's not that somebody's going to come in and buy, a box of wine and 24 beers. That's just not what happens at premises, convenience store premises of this type, because that's what you bluntly go to the supermarket for, because of the cost implications. So I think it's very much the top-up shopper, whether it's buying something because they're out for fuel, or they're passing and they know they can now get that for something that's part of their evening meal. And I think, that's probably why the likes of some of the associations of the other operators with Marks and Spencers are successful, because of the expectation of what we get with a particular brand associated with a petrol filling station, and Londis ticks that box, I suppose, as a known entity.
Thank you for that detailed answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else wishing to ask any questions. I think we all be content and understand what is going on. Are we happy to proceed with this and not need to retire to make any decisions on this application? I'm
happy to proceed.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've heard what's been said. So are we ready to proceed on over? So I'm happy to grant this application. I don't see any issues with it. It's been all very well explained. They've done their market research, and we see how it's been all upgraded and looking very good. And I noticed some colleagues have actually been and used the new service station. So I don't see why it's any different from any of the other ones that we've granted in the last few weeks. So I would be happy to grant this application.
Happy to second that, convener.
Happy to grant.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Agreed.
And I think as we know, they want to do deliveries, we would be putting in the delivery condition, and that was indicated that they were willing to accept that. So grant subject to the mandatory conditions and local condition of the delivery of alcohol.
Thank you, and just to confirm what I said earlier, and I'll deal with the dispersal policy. I think Mr. Elliott might try to say something there. He might be on mute. I don't know if I thought he was about to say something there, but so I'll deal with that as well.
Members, just to be clear, conveners, just face has gone off the screen. Hopefully she'll come back. There we go.
Sorry,
members,
my landline rang at the wrong time there to try and shut it.
Yes.
Sorry.
But members, what I have is grant subject to mandatory conditions and a local condition concerning the deliveries of alcohol with the premises. And at the moment, I don't have anything down for the dispersal of patrons. Mr. Hunter says that will be dealt with anyway. Is that correct, members? It's simply delivery policy? Or do you want the dispersal policy added as well?
I'm not too bothered for the dispersal policy is added as a policy, as long as the company are going to deal with it as it is, and I'm sure they will.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with the convener on that one.
Yep, same here.
Okay.
And I think if there are any issues, we know what happens. It comes before another board, so we want people to try and be responsible for their own actions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now,
And Mr.
Mr.
Hunter, I
Hunter's
believe
staying on.
you will be staying with us for some time, Mr. Hunter, I believe.
Yeah, you'll be sorry to hear that. Yes, yes.
Not at all, not at all. So we now move on to Billionfield.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm on my Todd for this one.
All right, that very good. Then we won't need to go through the procedures of introducing who's here. So this is a major variation application for the BP Billionfield M&S on the A90 westbound in Invergowrie. Can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application?
Thank you, Convener. The proposed variation seeks to increase the size of the Apple display area, which is not accessible to the public. It's behind the tills. And you've got a copy of the proposed layout plan. Appreciates it's such a scale, it's hard to read, but the area we're talking about is immediately behind the tills, and no objections have been received. I've nothing else to add.
Thank you. Mr. Hunter, if you'd like to speak to this application, please.
Of course, thank you. Bluntly, the submission is very boring. So the display area behind the counter is being reconfigured. So the same products are available for sale that are currently there. It just looks different, and because it looks slightly different, it measures slightly different. So you get a 0.54 square meter increase in alcohol display, but for the point of view of the customer, it means nothing other than it looks a wee bit nicer. So that's the totality of the application.
Thank you very much. I'll be surprised if any members got any questions to ask on this, because this is just, we all remember when Billionfield came to the board many years ago, so it's interesting how it has progressed. So I'm happy to grant this application.
The additional space amounts to 2 3 feet long, 9-inch wide shelves. So yeah, to me it's very small indeed. So we should go ahead with it.
Yeah, so we're happy to agree to vary the operating plan and amend the layout plan as requested.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Convener, just to officially tell you that we do appear to have now lost Councillor Brock. She has left the meeting. I'm not sure why, but we can continue on.
Sorry. Deputy Clerk, you said we can't continue on.
Sorry, we can continue.
Sorry, I thought you said you can't. I was going to think, God, somebody else disappeared.
No. Oh, there, she must have just dropped by. She's coming back.
Must have lost a connection. Welcome back. I seem to have internet problems, no sound. Yeah, okay. Right, now we continue to Knockandarroch.
Yes, I think Struan and Lothian of the applicant company may be in the waiting room.
Thank you. I did see he was waiting in the lobby. Oh yeah, I think he's joined us. Oh yes, see you there. Welcome, Struan Lothian, to this meeting, and we will ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce this application.
Thank you, Convener. Now, the proposed variation primarily seeks to extend the hotel restaurant, extend the outdoor area, and add the large house annex to the premises licence. As a result, there are consequent changes to the operating plan and the layout plan. There are also other minor changes. Now, members, you have a copy of the proposed location and layout plan with your papers. And the last thing is no objections have been received. I've nothing further to add.
Very much. Mr. Hunter, over to you.
Thank you, Convener. I think probably on the face of it, it looks like there's quite a lot happening here, but I think many of the changes are what I would describe as footery, with the operating plan, just things getting tidied up. And so the main thing to highlight Mr. Lothian is doing here is that the former annex, which wasn't part of the hotel, has been renovated, as I understand, to create 3 new rooms. And because it's within the property itself, but not part of the actual building, we've effectively put in the layout plan an indicative route where any kind of room service might come from, so that it ties it into part of the licensed area, but the Larch House annex would be for residents of the hotel only. The restaurant area has been improved and extended, so to allow for both some additional cover for residents and non-residents, and there's been some extension of the external area around that renovation. The absence of any objections, I think, would then, in my submission, suggest that there had been a positive reception to the application. Frankly, in terms of operation, having heard from me for the last 40 minutes, if there's any questions about how the premises are doing, you might want to direct them to Mr. Lothian, because he'll be, we can be far more interesting description of any of the changes. But certainly, I think it's broadly positive, and I think it's great to see investment in hotel premises to bring up and provide additional availability for tourists and the like who want to stay. And of course, the annex creates a different aspect to that. So I think it's a positive application. I invite you to grant it, but of course, if there's any particular questions you want to ask, then we'll be delighted to assist you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. Councillor Wilson, you have a question.
Thanks, Convener, and I agree totally with Mr. Hunter's description of the footery, but I think it demonstrates the value of the licensing board and applicants who keep their applications up to date and current, which I think is really important for everybody concerned. Just one for Mr. Lothian. How do you see the hotel going forward, given all the changes that have been, and how will this application assist you in that process?
Good morning. So the hotel going forward it's very much business as usual. We're just a little larger. The restaurant almost exclusively caters for just my own guests. If my hotel is full, then my restaurant is fairly full, and we're able to take a few additional tables a night. That was how it was when we had 14 rooms in a slightly smaller restaurant. We are now 18 rooms in a slightly larger restaurant. I think we can cater for up to about 52, and that's what we've applied for. Plenty space for people to sit at between the lounge and the restaurant. Everyone is seated. We don't have a bar area. That's not particularly going to change. It's all just lounge service. So just very much business as usual, I think.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't see anyone else wishing to ask a question. It's really, I've no questions, it's just a comment. It's really very encouraging to see hotels willing to expand and make it more attractive for tourists and the general public. So it's encouraging, and it is just a big tidying up exercise, which is going to make life a lot easier for you and everyone else. So thank you for bringing this application to us and getting rid of all the footery bits, as Mr. Hunter maybe referred to. So I am happy to grant this application, and I will not go through all the different changes that are being made, because I think it's all there in front of us and we're not doing anything different. So I'm happy to grant this application. I presume this is a unanimous decision by the board.
Yes, consent.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Thank you. So, Mr. Daly, is there anything you wish to say to formalise this in my?
Members, just simply be granted subject to amending the premises licence. It's a description of the premises licence. All the changes as set out for the operating plan, and also amending the location layout plan, which is before you as well. So essentially, you're granting the application.
Thank you very much. So we wish you well in your new operating plan. I'm sure it's going to be a lot easier to understand for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter, for coming along and through all this business in record time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And for those of the members of the board who are taking a step back, best of luck for whatever comes next. And for those who wish to sit again, best of luck, and hopefully see you on the other side. I don't live in Perth and Kinross, so I can't influence what happens. But if you wish to return, my best wishes in being able to do so. And thanks very much for your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Hunter.
Thanks, Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
Thank you.
So before we finish, I'd just like to say a few words and like to
Convener, we
thank
still
all.
have one. We still have one more application.
Oh, sorry. I
Yeah.
just, sorry, beg your pardon. I just thought we'd finished in record time. Beg your pardon.
Well done, Kathleen.
It's 7-3 Blair Athol Distillery. Shona, could
Oh,
you bring
yes,
in the
yes.
person?
Sorry, goodness me.
Anyway,
Hmm.
We can see you're keen to go, Kathleen, yes.
oh, the dentist awaits.
It's not till 3 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh. Plenty of time. You could be able to walk there,
Easy.
Kathleen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Would you like to introduce yourself? David? Oh, I see
Yes,
you there
good.
on the screen now.
Yes. I'm David Hosick from Morton Fraser Solicitors, and I'm delighted to have with me today Laura Murray, who's the regional brand home manager for Diageo and is currently the premises manager for Blair Athol.
Right, thank you. I'm Councillor Baird, the convener of the licensing board, and with me this morning I've got Councillor Parrott, Councillor Wilson, Councillor McCall, Councillor Gray, Councillor Brock, Councillor James, and the Deputy Clerk, Colin Elliott. So this is the major variation application for Blair Athol Distillery, Pitlochry. Can I invite the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Convener. First of all, send my thanks to Mr. Fozak and Ms. Murray. Members don't know, but we're making such progress. I asked them to be on standby from about 11:30 onwards. As it turns out, we ended up on time at 11:45. Anyway, we've not had a break. We just simply, it was naturally 11:45. But my thanks for being on standby anyway, just in case. Now, members, the existing premises licence is unusual in that the on-sales hours commence before 11 AM. The only time premises licences for premises licence for the board has permitted on-sales hours before 11 AM within your jurisdiction is for distillery visitor tours. That's what the case is here. Now, also unusually, the premises can also have more than 2 off-sales alcohol display areas. Members are very familiar. You've got only allowed 1 public, 1 private display area. This is different. Multiple display areas are permitted where the premises' main function is as a visitor attraction and part of a larger site used principally for the production of alcoholic drinks, and visitor attraction used principally to provide information about and promote the history and attributes of a particular alcoholic drink or a particular category of alcoholic drink. That comes from legislation, which is why I'm going through it quickly. Now, members, the proposed variation includes increasing on-sales terminal hours to 12 midnight, to expand when existing activities take place and add new activities, to expand and clarify access by the public, to expand and simplify access by children and young persons, to increase on and off sales capacity, to add a local condition that reflects that tours take place with on sales before 11 AM, and to add a local condition to reflect that deliveries take place. Members, you have copies of 3 plans: the site and visitor layout plan, the site and reception layout plan, and the site and courtyard layout plan are before you. And lastly, convener, no objections have been received to the variation application. I have nothing more to add.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hosick, would you like to speak to this application, please?
Indeed. I think before I go into the details of what's proposed here, I think it might be helpful just to refresh what happens on these premises. And the licence, as Your Honour's Clerk said, is to cover the activities at Blair Athol Distillery, which is, as you'll probably know, on the centre, the edge of the centre of Pitlochry. And there are a number of different areas here, I think in a sense defined by the way in which the distillery is laid out. First of all, there's a staff shop which is not open to the public, but in line with many of the other Diageo premises that there is that for members of staff and retired members of staff. Secondly, there's a reception building which has got bar and tasting facilities in it, and that's as you come into the premises from one side, from the car park area. Third, there's a visitor centre with retail areas, tasting areas, and functioning meeting rooms. Now, these rooms, the functioning meeting rooms, tend to be used more for Diageo staff training, for people coming from other areas for staff meetings and so on, rather than for visitor activities, but they can be for these purposes from time to time. And finally, there's an external courtyard which has been licensed for some time. And it's fair to say it's been of a huge benefit in the last few years because of the pandemic, when the focus has had to shift outdoors, and we're very glad that that was the case. The main function of the premises is for visitors who are both tourists and whisky aficionados. These tend to be the two groupings. It's been difficult for me to put an exact figure on the licensing history of the centre. It may well be that Your Honour's clerk can help there. But it certainly was in existence well before the transition in 2009 and before the current legislation came into play. And I don't think there's been any change in the layout of the premises since that date. Pre-COVID and hopefully post the pandemic, it was attracting upwards of 85,000 visitors to the site per annum, which makes a considerable contribution to tourism in the area. So what goes on there? Well, the main activity is the visitor centre with tours where visitors learn about the area, the heritage of Blair and Athol whisky, how the product's made, and they see the distillery in action. They're taken through it and they see what goes on. And as part of that tours, visitors are offered samples of whisky to consume on the premises, or for those who are driving or don't want to partake, they can take these away with them. There's a retail shop which sells whisky and souvenir products, and as Your Honour's clerk said, it's different from other premises given the terms of the legislation in that there's a much wider display and more diverse display area with things mixed in together. Recent minor variations applications have been made for these premises to reflect the considerable investment in this area and in whisky tourism generally by my clients. Given the nature of the operation, people don't tend to come into the shop to buy a bottle of whisky, but rather the purchases tend to come from a visit to the distillery facilities. So why are we making this application? Well, it's been a few years in the coming. There are a number of reasons for the applications, and it stems from a number of different factors. Firstly, we want to tidy up the wording of the licence from what was in place at the transition from the old regime. Some of the wording didn't quite fit with the way that the premises operate. Secondly, there are some changes in the operating plan to reflect and in layout plans to reflect major investment in whisky tourism by Diageo. And finally, we want to try and align the licence as much as possible with other Diageo operations, so there's a similar approach in terms of taking in wording, whilst nonetheless being cognizant of the board's policy and local considerations. So what in particular do we want to do here? Well, there's a minor change in the description of the premises and the premises licence to reflect some of the changes in the layout plan. We're including a condition to reflect that any alcohol consumed before 11 o'clock is only as part of or following on from a tasting and sampling session, which will be part of the distillery tours. And I think this fits with what was said earlier by Your Honour's clerk about being it from 9 o'clock. My clients do not seek to sell alcohol to members of the public at 9 o'clock, but the hours from 9 is really to allow people to come in as part of arranged tours and to enjoy a sample on or after those tours. So we suggested that condition commensurate with conditions we've used in other areas, and that may give Your Honour some comfort. We've also included a condition about written policies for the delivery of alcohol from these premises. Now, that's certainly something that's possible and is sought in terms of the operating plan. There are changes in the operating plan to allow later hours, to allow particular events to take place from time to time in the evenings, to allow a wider range of activities, and to tidy up some of the wording, which is a little bit clumsy. We also seek to simplify the wording in relation to children and young persons, which again was a little bit clumsy, and to make it clear what that means, and that is that children can have access when accompanied by adults, and young persons don't have to be accompanied, the 16 and 17-year-olds. There are also changes in the layout plans. Now, why are we doing this? We've done some recently in terms of minor variations. Firstly, we're combining some of the information on one drawing where there were two that had similar information before. It makes it much simpler for people to look at. We're also making it very clear which areas children and young persons don't have access to, and I don't think that was as clearly delineated and defined as it should have been before. And we're also including some areas which appear to have been omitted from previous licensing drawings, I don't know why that's the case, but in terms of looking at these premises, carrying out an audit, we identified that there's some places, some areas that probably ought to be included in the plans that weren't. And this is to get things right now. There are changes in capacity to increase the number of on sales to 800. It's very seldom that you'll have these people, such a number on the premises, but that's from a building standards perspective. I think it's a high number and is a permissible number, and off sale to 38 metres squared. And for some reason, it didn't appear to have been mentioned in the previous operating plans what the off sale capacity was, although I think it was around 18.21 metres cubed. That was mentioned on one of the drawings. So it's unclear why that was the case, but I think it's right to set that out now so that there's clarity going forward. So finally, in operating these premises, my client pays great heed to the question of protecting and improving public health. As a major global operator, it's at the forefront of initiatives to ensure that alcohol is enjoyed responsibly, and in operating these facilities they really want this to be at the core of what they're doing. Responsible drinking is absolutely at the heart of what they do. So what is proposed here, I think, is congruent with the licensing objectives and indeed with the way the premises have been managed without difficulty for many years. I would move grant of the application, but I'd certainly be pleased to deal with any questions or comments that Your Honours might have. I think you're on mute, Councillor.
Thank you very much for all this additional information you have given us. Councillor Parrott, you have a question and a comment.
I think Tom was in first.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Gray.
Very well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Could you just explain what a formal tasting and sampling session is? And what I'm really after is to understand exactly why, or if it's possible for someone who'd come in and under pretense of being part of a formal sampling session and buy his whiskey and disappear again before 11 o'clock.
Yes, I mean, a formal tasting session would be one for which there is a charge made, and it's part of a following on from a tour of the premises. So it's not that somebody would pop into the shop, have a wee sample and buy something, but rather they would have undertaken a formal and arranged tour. Well, certainly the tours can be booked in advance, but someone could turn up in non-COVID times and buy a ticket for a tour and get a sample on the tour or after that tour. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Laura, on that point.
The only thing I would add is that on occasion we've had requests for those who have already been on a tour of a distillery to have a masterclass with one of our guides. So it's an education, an opportunity to educate also. So it's a formal ticketed tasting whereby someone would be taken through the process, as David has mentioned, and then be offered samplings as part of that tasting. And these drams are also of a smaller sampling size than you would expect if you were purchasing directly in a bar or the likes of.
Good, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Councillor Parrott.
Yes, thank you very much, Convener. My question has become a comment because Mr. Hossack has, in a sense, picked up on the point, and I noted, if you like, the capacity being 800 persons, which seems very large for the premises. But if that's consistent with building standards, then that to me is obviously fine. But 800 people is arguably 20 coach loads at a time. So surely it must be very, very rare that you ever get to approaching those numbers. Thanks.
Yes, indeed. Again, Laura may be able to comment on this, but I think it is very much the upper limit. And I suppose it might cover a scenario where there was a particular event on, and there were a lot of people coming to do tastings as well. But realistically, we don't think it would be anywhere near that. Laura, do you want to pick up on that?
Yes, I would agree. It would be. I don't expect us to reach that upper limit, but it would be covering us in consistency with the standards, as David mentioned, for the building. However, we don't anticipate reaching those numbers because it would essentially be people arriving, leaving all at the same time. But that would also be taken into account the capacities that we have in the meeting rooms as well, because the buildings obviously are quite large in the meeting room spaces as well.
Okay, many thanks.
Convener, if I could come in the building standards position, as you know, it's a technical capacity for on sales. The building standards position is 2 persons per square metre. And I think it's just kind of been answered, and there are large areas such as the courtyard area. And if you apply 2 persons per square metre, you get a high figure because you have large areas where there's nothing in them. You've got a function area, you've got a reception area, you've got a courtyard. Hence why, at least from my observation, I think you have a high number for the on sales figure.
I think it would be rather crowded being there with 800 people. I don't know if that would be such a lovely experience for people, but that's a personal opinion. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Convener, and thanks, David and Laura, for your joint presentation. I thought it was very informative. Just looking going forward, how does this application that's before us today help you to sweat your asset, I think is the professional term, get more out of your investment? But also, what plans have you got for the Pitlochry area, say working in partnership with local hotels, Pitlochry Theatre, etc., as part of the, if I can call it, the Pitlochry experience? Now, I know that's a bit tourist related, but as a licensing board, we have a responsibility to make sure that we have responsible drinking practices in Perth and Kinross, but also that we help promote our area, which is an excellent one, and you're part of that excellence. And going forward, especially as we work our way tiptoe, maybe is the right word, through not the post-pandemic, but the next phase of the pandemic and the phase after that. I just wonder, you've obviously got a business plan. Do you want to just share for a moment or two a wee bit of that with us? What thoughts and ideas have you got?
I might start off with this, then pass to Laura, Councillor Wilson. I suppose the starting point for this is there's been a huge amount of investment by Diageo in whisky tourism, which has rather been delayed because of the pandemic. At the heart of that is the Johnnie Walker experience in Edinburgh, which is in Princes Street. Now that obviously is designed to get folks into Edinburgh and into that building, but very much that building is then directing tourists to the capital, to other parts of Scotland, where Johnnie Walker whiskies and other Diageo whiskies are distilled, and one of these is clearly Pitlochry. So there's an outwards from the centre move to get people into Perthshire and other parts of Scotland, and it's hoped that would be helpful for the economy of Perthshire. I can maybe pass to Laura to deal with the more local issues that flow from this.
Thank you. We work very closely with the other attractions within the area, both immediately within Pitlochry and the surrounding areas of Dunkeld, Aberfeldy, offering first and foremost, obviously, employment around these areas, as well as enticing visitors to come. We also work very closely in conjunction with a lot of the hotels where their visitors would like to stay and do other events, hence why we're requesting for the hours, because then we work with the hotels. Their catering teams will come in and provide the catering for their guests, but whilst having an experience at the distillery. We work a lot of different events, like at the Blair Athol Castle for the horse trials, events like that. We work very closely with them. With the theatre, we work in close conjunction with them, advertising with them. We're looking at different initiatives in which we can support that as well. So I do believe that we have a very close relationship with the rest of the community within Pitlochry. We are also now the only distillery that invites visitors within the area. So we are seen as being a very enticing opportunity for those people in the local area, because it's providing an experience to visitors that international visitors are really looking for.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else wishing to ask any questions here. So I'm happy to grant this application, and I will not go through all the bits that are going to be tidied up, but I think it's probably quite good to get all this tidied up and make it much easier for people to understand what it is. So I'm happy to grant this application.
After the second, convener.
To agree to vary the premises license, the operating plan, and amend the location and layout plans.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Honours.
Sorry, Deputy Clerk, anything you wish to add?
Only matter, Convener, you've narrated it all. It's grant the application. There will be amendments to the premises license, including the description. There will be lots of changes to the operating plan, which I'm not going to narrate either. Amending the location and layout plans, but the one wasn't mentioned, of course. Remember, there will be changes to the local conditions, adding 2 local conditions. First one is about prior to 11 AM. We've narrated that before.
Yes.
And the second one is about having a written policy in place to do with deliveries.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, thank you very much, and I wish you a good season and continued success. So thank you both very much for joining the meeting. You're free to go. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, members, that does bring us to the end of the agenda, or the agenda that I have in front of us. You will be delighted to hear. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the members for their input, and my Deputy Councillor James, who on 2 occasions I had to leave the meeting, so I'm left it in his capable hands. So thank you very much, Councillor James, to all the members for their input and making it a pleasure to be convener of this licensing board. I'd like to thank Deputy Clerk Colin Elliott, who really does a huge amount of work before meetings and on the day to help us, because all the hard work's been done before it, and what we get in front of us is every piece of information that we should need, and if we don't know it, we should have read it properly. And also not forget Shona Douglas, who know that she's the unseen lady who really does a tremendous amount of work. And I know, talking to applicants, they are very, very pleased with the support and help that they get. I think it seems to be can-do. If they ask a question, Shona goes out of her way to try and make it easier for applicants rather than leave them floundering. So I think people don't understand that the licensing board is such a small team of people who do a tremendous amount of work, and I think others are amazed that we do not have anybody taking minutes at these meetings. The Deputy Clerk has to keep us right and take the minutes and do everything else. So it's quite amazing what the licensing team do. So really, and I would like to add, during the last 2 years, it must have been difficult for all licensees to work and know what the rules were. And I'm delighted that very few of them have fallen off the radar. Most paid all their fees. We've had so few coming before us. And in fact, we haven't had any who hadn't paid their fees. So all credit to the licensing team. And it's been a pleasure being your convener. So thank you. Councillor Gray, you've got your hand up. You wish to, is that a legacy?
Yeah, well, exactly. No, Justin, I've got to concur with most of what you said, everything what you've said, I should say. And really, Colin, we're deeply indebted to you for your input into the running of this committee. It's quite fantastic. And what strikes me about it is the diversity of the licensing board, the diversity of work, the diversity of applications coming forward. And I'm going to comment slightly on one that really struck me, and I thought it really showed the breadth of the work we do. And that was one fairly, maybe within the last year at some point. And it was a case where a publican who had become confronted by the law from something which was nothing to do with his running the pub. It was simply a private domestic issue, which unfortunately by bad neighbourliness from one of his neighbours caused him to contravene good neighbourliness. And And it put him in such bother regarding his occupation and his running of the pub, which clearly had nothing to do with the pub. And it was so poignant, different from the most of the work we do, but it was particularly relevant to see just how far the licensing board and the police go to make sure that those who run pubs and premises, licensed premises, do concur to the most reasonable standards possible. And that was very striking. One wee thing about the one today on Broxden Roundabout, and it struck me that, these facilities, as have been developed to more and more groceries, more and more licenses applied to these premises, it really meets well with the fact that holidays on the road, that is travelling people in their motorhomes, can drop in, fill up the vehicle and fill up their fridge and their cool box. And it makes a lot of sense. And I suspect this is on the mind of some of these developers. I've got to say that.
Yeah.
Anyway, many thanks, Colin, and many thanks, Shona. Super service. Great stuff. Thank you. Good luck.
Rose, I think.
Yes,
Thank
you, convener. And I know we're still on, but and I don't want to repeat everything that you've said and Councillor Gray has said, because I concur with all of it, and the staff are absolutely brilliant. But I do want to make one wee comment to yourself, convener. You have convened the licensing board exceptionally well over the last couple of years. I know you're moving on to retirement. I know you're moving on to enjoy whatever life has for you. But I think it would be remiss if we didn't happen to add you to that list. So as much as I concur entirely with the staff and the licensees that we have out there, convener, I think you should be added to. And that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said, Rose.
Councillor Wilson, I think you were next.
Thank you. I'll be uncharacteristically brief. I think Colin has been exemplary in his diligence in helping us. And I sometimes say, this off the cuff remark, he's the chap who keeps us out of trouble, but he certainly keeps us on the road of improvement and betterment, and that's really, really important. And to Shona as well in the background, I'm glad she's been referred to. I was hoping she might even appear on the screen for a minute, but to Shona as well. And Colin, as you said, I've known you an awful long time. I've thoroughly enjoyed all of the work involved in this, and it's been good, including going round at night and doing the tours of the pubs, which has been interesting. And Kathleen, just to follow on from Rose's remark, your convenership has again been stellar in this term, and you've done it with good humour, but you've kept us in order, you've kept us going. And you've kept us to the point, and I want to thank you personally for your efforts in that regard, and thank everybody else, because it's been extremely good-natured. We've had a lot of serious stuff, but we've also had one or two laughs, and that's what makes the world go round. So thank you.
Councillor Brock.
Thank you, Keenan. I think everyone's probably more or less here. Special thanks to yourself.
Thank you.
You see, I've been on the board for 10 years since the day I came on to the council. And so I really
I think you're having problems with your sound, Rona, you're breaking up. We're really not hearing you.
7:10.
Well, maybe come back to you, Rona, because we're not hearing you.
For everyone, it's been okay.
Sorry, Rona, we really didn't hear what you said. Your sound broke up, so maybe come back to you if you want. Councillor James.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll be extremely brief, convener, because people have already beaten me to it. It's for yourself. You've just been fantastic, convener. Really good to me personally, and you've run a real tight ship. I've thoroughly enjoyed this committee in particular. It's been apolitical. Everybody's got on, and actually, it's been, although it's a serious business, it has also had its light-hearted moments, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Colin, your knowledge is second to none, and Shona, thanks for keeping us in order. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this committee, and if I'm lucky enough to be re-elected, I would love to come back on. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Parrott.
Yes, I just wish to express much as Ian has. I think this committee, the papers are always immaculately prepared. The meetings have always been extremely well convened. And if circumstances permit, then this is certainly a committee I would be keen to serve on again. Thanks.
Thank you all very much.